So module 23, corpora as primary resource for ELT. So long, we have talked about the features, nature, construction process, state of corpus, and processing of corpus. The last inevitable section of this discussion is utilization or application of corpus in various domains of human knowledge. So, keeping in mind in the rest of the modules of this course, we'll try to identify how we can utilize language corpora of Indian languages or that of English in various domains of our regular language related activities, starting from English language teaching, dictionary comparison, dialectology, and many other fields. So, in the subsequent modules, we will try to concentrate on these things, application potentials, and finally, we will try to understand as India where we stand and what are the needs, future directions, or future requirements for us. In this module, we are trying to see how corpora can be used as a primary resource for English language teaching. So the basic rationale is that here we are talking or taking the English language corpus as basic input and trying to manipulate this corpus in different ways or others to retrieve, to utilize it as a primary resource in teaching. So first we need to know why we need to depend on corpus, English language day-to-day corpus of English language use for our corpus. What are the advantages we get than our traditional method? Yet, so we can sum up the whole things in this manner that intuition-based ELT text materials are often found to be misleading and stale because most of the cases, those ELT materials which are based on intuitions certainly contain intuitively invented examples which normally overlook or even ignore the important aspects of language usage and foreground less frequent stylistic choices at the expense of the more frequent ones. But on principles we are not into that. We emphasize that the learners who are learning English as their second language, particularly in Indian context, they should be more exposed to those words, terms, and patterns of sentences which are more frequent, more recurrent, more commonly used by common people. So, usage-based approach in ELT is more important to train our students in a far better way, to make them more equipped, more powerful, more elegant in English. Second, corpus-based ELT materials are far more reliable and authentic because these are developed from corpora that contain data, information, and examples of real-life language usage. Here, the common choices of linguistic usage are given more attention and preference than the rare ones. So, corpus data, which is used now to are more authentic, more valuable, more reliable than intuitionist. And it is also proved or seen that when learners are trained with corpus, they perform far better in their performance than those people who are intuitively trained. In fact, several studies made across the globe while English corpora was directly used in classroom teaching to the learners. And other people who are not trained with corpus have clearly noted, observed, many empirical studies have clearly reported that those people who are trained with reference to corpus, they perform far better than these people who are trained without corpus. So there are many such advantages. Therefore, it is always better that we should go to corpus to train our learners. So first here we can have look at that in English language corpus we have speech, two parts. One is speech part, another is text part. Now let us see how we can use those two components, two parts, in cases of teaching Indian language. So here is a tree diagram which has been given here, and that can give you a very clear idea how the speech part of the English corpus and the text part of the English corpus can be used to train Indian learners while the ELT courses are introduced to them. So first let me take the speech part. Say verbal communication. As you know that the verbal communication is a unique kind of event where a lot of things are involved. So if we look at any two examples of verbal communications between two native English speakers and two non-native English speakers, you can clearly understand that the native speakers actually do it more fluently, more elegantly, more better way than the non-native speakers. So if you want to train them, the non-native speakers, about the clarity of the verbal communications, the fluency of the verbal communication, the smoothness in the communication, then definitely we can directly collect some examples, some texts from the speech corpus and present before them, and also can be used to train them. Second important part, speech and accent use. Even if you teach us in a most rigorous way in classroom, the teacher won't be able to give the exact ways, instructions, how to use speech and accents while you're speaking in a normal way, as the teacher do. So corpus has the potential, corpus has the chance to cite the examples and actual examples of interactions where speech and accents are properly used, and the learners can follow those, imitate those, or can identify where particular kind of speech accent is given, what kind of stress accent is given, and what kind of various texts. Same thing happens in cases of intonations. As you know that intonation pattern is important to communicate properly, rightly, and adequately. So speech corpus has a quality to train Indian learners about the intonation patterns of the standard British pronunciation or communications, verbal communications. Then the question of suprasegmental comes in. So as you know that it is very difficult for us to learn the suprasegmental properties and use them appropriately, adequately, rightly inside the speech, even such spoken text, until and unless we are adequately trained into it. So the English speech corpus can be highly useful for this purpose, where we can have a lot of examples, citations, and references to the corpus to find out how in different contexts the normal, irregular, native speakers use the suprasegmental property of speech. So there are various other types. Say mediation is another kind of text. We need training. Negotiation, how they do the normal speech, how they do negotiate things, how they do the task-based speeches carried out. Examples of task-based speech can be taken to train learners. Then in speech, the very important part is turn-taking organizations. How the turn people communicate, how one person finishes and the second person starts, or the interlocutors exchange ideas, views, or communicate, and following the process which is called turn-taking organizations. So that is a very crucial things to learn when we communicate. Linear learners can have full text reference from the ELC to be used in classroom also to give some guidance to training how to do that. Same thing also happens in cases of dialogic introductions, emphatic communications, modulations of text based on context, the dynamic property of speech to be captured in training, the spontaneity of speech, then how the use of everyday lexes, then non-standard grammar, use of non-standard grammar, various stylistic variations, interactive discourses, language in action, what are the structure, change, modulations when the language in action, formalities and informalities, management of public space in communication, use of silence, and a very important thing, how you are going to use silence in communications. So in case of speech data analysis, speech part, you can get so many nearly 20 important properties which we need to teach to the Indian learners, but these are not readily available. So what I can do is that we can refer to the English speech text, speech corpus to get those data information to be trained to the Indian learners. Now, if you go back to the text part, we can find out that there are various ways where we can get information from the text corpus. If we say the list we have given here, if you look at the list, you can do that. English speech corpus, the text corpus can give you some ground information about the patterns of written communication, the use of standard grammar writing, the grammatical complexities in formation of sentences, the lexical choice variations in constructions of a text, the patterns of lexical usages, the nature of lexical collocation, the patterns of narrativity, drafting and rewriting the text, formal writing and informal writing, monologic organizations, combinations of text, the synoptic structure of the text, use of prestige lexes inside the text if it is a very highly formal one, and a lot of stylistic variations, the argument structuring, usage of idioms, phrases, proverbs, multi-word units, figurative expressions, logical text compositions, information packaging. So all those things also come into the text. So all those properties which we need to teach to the learners are not easily available to us except we refer to the text corpus. So what we argue here is that we can refer to the English language corpus for the purpose of English language teaching. Then the next point is data-driven learning. So data-driven learning, the basic argument is that all the learning process, all the language teaching process should be based on data. Here, if we want to teach the pronunciation variations of the sounds to the Indian learners, we need to refer to the data which is available here in the English speech corpus. Suppose what we have come across various times that suppose in English A, how to pronounce it. So the textbooks is available to us, don't give us accurate descriptions or accurate information how it has to be. Maybe one or all the time, if you look at the text materials, you can find out that English A is always pronounced as A in almost all the ELT text materials available in India for the Indian learners. But analysis of English corpus shows that this particular letter has at least 8 different pronunciation variations based on contexts. It's based on the data. So now the question is, if we have a speech corpus ready with us, even if a speech corpus where all the variations of pronunciation of this particular letter is available, we can give them to the learners and train them how, depending on the various contexts and usage-based model, how these learners should learn to pronounce this word or this letter in different contexts, in different ways. So what happens that if we provide the corpus itself to the learners, this is another important part, that rather than a teacher instructing the learners all the time that this is the way you have to search, this is the way you have to learn, this is the way you have to carry out the tasks, or this is the way you have to imitate the pronunciations. or uses of the words or something like that is the way you have to construct the sentence. Rather than doing all those kinds of instructive activities, think we are giving the entire corpus to the learners and asking them, you explore the corpus and find out what are the units in the text. Suppose I have given a simple text with say 30 sentences, technical corpus, and ask the learners, can you find out how the word the is used in different sentences and different frames, and can you generalize them? Can you find out any patterns? So what happens here, the learners are no more instructed by the teacher. Rather, their query, their investigation motivation is triggered. So they are now no more learners, rather they are explorers. So they become more interested in that frame because we have put a challenge before them. So learners, what they do now, they search into the text between the words and try to identify why the particular word, the article the is occurring. And they also try to gather all the examples, all the sentences or combinations where the article has taken place. Now, if you ask them, can you identify if there is any variations in use or any patterns of use? And if you can give some clues that we can find out why these used, why these not used, why A is used, then that kind of comparative studies can give them far better understanding of the language. And they themselves can learn more important things, many new things which the teacher may not have perceived, may not have realized. So suppose we give a full-fledged text to the learners where there are a lot of uses of the, a lot of uses of a, a lot of uses of and. And we can ask them, can you identify the situations where these three types of articles are used? Then you can classify and identify what are the reasons behind that. In that case, it is possible that the learners can themselves identify the situations, how those three articles are distributed, and also they can find out the reasons behind that. So this makes the learners much more empowered to understand the patterns of use. So this is basically called a data-driven learning. The second or third point, yearly learners as researchers. So what happened that now we are setting the questions to the learners using the English corpus data and giving the data and asking them to carry out the tasks which are assigned. We can go a little far, particularly in cases of advanced learners rather than the primary learners or beginners. In case of advanced learners, we can go little more there. We give them corpus of different types, text types, and ask the learners to formulate questions of their own and to address these questions from the corpus. So what they can do is that they can study the words, identify certain features, and formulate questions. Then they further explore and justify the questions. Our basic target here is that in the advanced courses, they develop a scientific orientation to study language in a more intimate manner, identify the finer aspects of the language, memorize them, assimilate them, and practice it. So here, advanced learners can have better scope to grow themselves as far better learner language if they're supported with ELT. So what we say that that English curriculum, which now can have multiple applications direct. And all these cases here we are thinking of English curriculum as a primary resource to be used for the learners. Now, if you look at the error correction, this is an important part in language teaching. So, as you know that Indian learners make a lot of errors in use of appropriate prepositions, even in articles, even DVDs, and we also make sometimes, even personally, we can tell that we are often confused where the has to be used and the not has to be used. So, if we can teach them repeatedly several times saying the same thing, he perhaps may not achieve that kind of success as we expect. On the other hand, what you can do, you can ask them, can you please produce a text of your own produced by them? It is a text produced in labs. Now put that text side by side with the English text and ask them to identify what kind of errors they commit. And that can be corrected with reference to the English scholars. What we argue here is that the errors which are made by the governments are of great importance to rectify those errors and provide appropriate remedies to that. So what we can do is that we can identify by analyzing the text produced by the governments the errors they have made, and also it can classify what kind of errors they are actually making: grammatical errors, syntactic errors, semantic errors, or errors in lexical use, or whatever. Once these are identified properly, categories and classified, we can directly go back to the English language corpus, which is now using as a benchmark, and instruct the learners to follow and to identify, to make corrections of errors. So we have ELT has a tremendous role to play in error corrections of errors. So even in classroom teachings also, we can use those a English language curriculum as one of the important primary resources to make changes or to make corrections of errors made by learners. Another important part of ELC, that is language corpus, in ELT is sensory systems. So it is almost approved that the words which are available in the dictionary and the meanings which are produced in the dictionary against each word is not the same when the word is used in a particular piece of text and the range of senses it denotes. Quite several experiments have been made, and it has been clearly understood that the word, when it is used in a piece of text, can give many new range of meanings, new range of senses, which may not be available in a standard dictionary, however rich, however very. If this is so, then it becomes a very difficult task for the learners to understand in which senses the word is used. Here lies the importance of concordance or keyword contexts or other tools for the learners for teaching them the sense various expressions. What we argue is that words has many senses, and a word can be used in a corpus in many different senses. If this is so, then we need to produce a corpus with all possible senses available and present in the learners in a very systematic way, in a concordance pattern, so that the learners can examine those sentences and identify in different how the word is used in many different senses, and how that particular sense can be retrieved, can be understood, can be captured with reference to the context. Here I can give an example of, say, some sentences from the BNC, where you can find out that words are used in every different senses. Just a minute, I will show here. Look at these examples here. So it says, I'm giving the example of great. An individual is capable of both great compassion and great indifference. Now look at the sense of the great here: great compassion and great indifference. But friendship is a great thing. Definitely we understand that the meaning of great in great compassion or great indifference, and the meaning of great is a great thing is two different. Look at the next example. He lived to a great age of his life. Now if you look at the third example, the great is not giving the same sense as we noted in earlier two examples. Now if you look at the fourth example, his great uncle was a pilot for British Airways. Or if you have love in your life, it get many things in lack. Or love and magic have a great deal in common. Many men worry over the great number of digits. Rainy season is not a great one for travel. Sex is great thing, provided you know the tricks. The temptation is a great treason to do the right deed for the wrong reason. So if you look at the examples given here, great has many different senses. And I'm sure a dictionary, however large it be, however varied, if it is not corpus based, may not be able to keep all the senses in the texts. So here we can produce a concordance list of the two words and present them to the learners so that they themselves can go through the text and identify what are the senses it denotes, what are the meaning variations the word denotes. So corpus is highly useful in understanding sense variations and meaning variations of words that are used in texts. Similarly, corpus has tremendous role to play in understanding the stylistic variations of texts. Particularly in ELT, we always try to teach the normal, standard, acceptable kind of thing which is accepted as a normal standard word in English. But we know very clearly that English texts stylistically differ based on the domain or subject. The way a legal text is produced, made, is not the same way the text is produced in cases of children literature. Or if you look at the texts of a sports narrative or sports event, a report is completely different than a scientific text. So what is argued here is that even in text cases, there are a lot of stylistic variations, not only based on genres, based on domains, subject matter, text types, or even in individuals. But we never give much importance to them, to these variations, while we are teaching Indian learners about ELT or ELT courses. So this is very important for us to know that we now can provide them those facilities. Now we can present 6 or 7 or 10 different stylistic texts of different stylistic constructions or stylistic patterns or stylistic usages to the learners and ask them to compare among them, find out how a particular text is different from the other. So stylistic uniqueness of the particular text belongs to a particular domain, particular category. So they will be more explorative in nature. They'll more explore, understand how the stylistically one text can rise from other because of certain properties, certain features, certain constructions, and all other things. So what I argue here is that English texts of different types can be assembled together now and can be presented to the learners so that they learn more intimately the stylistic variations observed in different kinds of English texts, and if possible they can train themselves or assimilate those properties so that they in their life also can have that kind of skill to produce texts of different types and different stylistic variations. So these are the some of the major applications of English language corpus in direct primary resources in classroom teaching in ELT courses, English language teaching courses to the non-native learners. So what I argue here as a conclusion that if you want to change the strategy, the process of teaching to the Indian learners and to make them more powerful in English in communications, then definitely we need to take help of English language corpora and use them as a primary resource in English language teaching. In the next module, I'll be talking about how this corpus can be used as a secondary resource for developing various materials for English language teaching to the Indian learners. Thank you.